Speaking all this English. Wasting my time on this. I was like this. Where is everything? I guess so. It's just it's just a million. Just a nice discussion. Very interesting. You can't know until we hear what you have to say. I've just seen I've just seen the area and I'm like, I wish they had it. Even the speakers. Yeah. We shall be fine. We'll talk amongst ourselves.
Use AI to generate participants. We are disrupting. This is the age of disruption. And I'm part of the disrupting us.
And then there's one with celebrities. Yes. The copyright. Yeah. Because there's Lillian. There's Lillian. There's Tony's. There's another artist.
Alright, guys, it was nice knowing you.
I don't
Time we have shared
this, but it's been so amazing.
I will remember.
I'm out of here.
I will remember.
We will get some sunshine.
I will remember you all. Right. It's right one. Right. I left it right.
We have pictures after you.
In the afternoon. I was like, what should I do? But it was nice knowing you all. I wish you the best of luck. Participate.
We shall meet you at the
We'll see you when we meet at the
Bye.
Good afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to see you. Why is she here? I'm not pretending personally. It's a passion. Okay, it's a bit of a princess.
Just not, we have been greeted to be met. Say hi, boy. I don't know if I speak, I look at now I am an ordinary guy.
So yeah, from Nigeria. Okay. So
They are the most unlearned. We get some sun.
Don't switch that to this. Right over. Yes. Yeah, what details waiting on the news. They go on the swings at my state. Non comme ceci. Et donc INT mutegereje yafa yafudde kubanga James kiwa yakoleddwayo oba abadde yatawankalaga naye bamutawaanyiriye afunayo n'akategeeza nti ebintu ebyo mwamuzise yonna Quando ela teve as ações na e ela tinha meses e minha mãe disse que e ela ia não vai se o school aquele ali não foi o assunto não foi disse não vamos yes. Kira kira orang orang no, cansa de caminhar. Já foi de cansa. Mas tirar isso aí de concentration, não só. I remember that. Oh, maturity. March 8th. March 8th. We're also for Mark. Remember what happened? Mark, what's going on? C'est tout fait, c'est tout petit peu. Yes, you follow me. Yes. Yeah, I'm giving some experience. More
Welcome to our session. Sorry, we've not kept time. We apologize. There's a bit of communication happening in our main home right now. Then they'll release people they're saying in the next 5 minutes. So please bear with us, and then we will start. We don't want to start. You're from the main home. Oh, they have it? Okay, so let's get people in here so we can start. Thank you for your patience. I think I'm loud enough. Yes, my dear. Okay. All right, I think we'll begin. I'm going to request that we probably close, someone from Afia, just close one side of the door so that the people outside are not disrupting what's happening here. We will stick to the time that we have set so that we are not losing out on many things. Please. Okay, so as people stroll in at their pace, my name is Penelope Sanyu. I will be moderating today's conversations that will be happening here. For those of you who just stumbled on this place, this is being hosted by Afia Nahaki. Afia Nahaki, for those of you who are just hearing the name for the very first time, is an African Research and Training Institute, and they majorly advance health, human rights, sexual reproductive health and rights, and everything to do with research. So you're in a safe place. You prepare your questions, prepare all your intelligent conversations. We're going to have fun. The other thing we're going to do here is learn and share experiences. So don't be intimidated by the panel that will be here today. They are people and they are human just like us. They have experience in certain fields, but you also have experience in some of these fields. So we are going to have a shared learning. Before we begin, I would like to just request us to take just 1 minute to collect our thoughts. I know it's been a very, very busy day. I forgot to tell you I'm a feminist, and feminists like to take charge of spaces and make people feel at home. So I want us to just take a minute to just breathe and be in this space, because everything that's happening out there is disruptive. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information we've collected since morning. Some of us were stuck in traffic, and there's some road rage we have arrived with. Whatever you've come with, just leave it at the door. Take this 1 minute to breathe and center yourself to be in this place and allow yourself to connect and learn. Okay, great. Now that we are here, and we are here for Afya Nahaki, I will invite the Chairperson Health and Law Cluster, Uganda Law Society, who's Ibrahim Nsereko, to give us the opening remarks, and then we will delve into why we are here. Let's welcome him. You know, I know we've just had lunch, and we are probably wondering who's this woman speaking all this English. I will tone down, but let's encourage people. It's not easy to come and speak in front of people. Yeah, the lawyers are always speaking in front of people, but not everybody here is a lawyer. So give people some grace and some good energy to share what they need to share with you. So Ibrahim, you're welcome again. And oh wow, you guys are a tough audience. You're a tough audience, but I will work with you.
Good afternoon to all of us. I'd like to welcome all of you to this very important conversation. As Health and Law Cluster, we are privileged to Afya Nahaki Institute and Uganda Law Society for giving us this opportunity to convene a panel discussion on pertinent health and law conversations. At Afya Nahaki, we treasure Afrocentrism in whatever we do. and complex health emergencies are part and parcel of resolving public health concerns we have in Uganda and Africa. So we believe that conversations on complex emergencies are not for only public health people or the health professionals. There are issues for lawyers, the number of opportunities for litigation, opportunities for practice, opportunities for research, opportunities for so many other things a lawyer can think about. So as the health and law cluster, we think it's very important for lawyers to pick interest in these conversations, because the way legal practice is going is that we have gone into specialization, and health and law is a very virgin area of practice which we need to embrace and take on. So as I conclude, I enjoin all of us to join the health and law cluster. We have conversations on these topics and beyond. And I also take this opportunity to thank Afya and Haki Institute for accepting to support, collaborating with Law Society to convene this panel. I also thank the panelists for accepting to join us and be part of this conversation, and I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Seeing as the people in the room have decided that they are going to kill my energy, I might decide to focus on the people online, and I ask them to ululate so that they show you that this is serious. But thank you very much, Ibrahim, for your very good remarks. I like that you say that these issues are not just for the public health space, but there are legal issues that we need to also focus on and build on, and agree that we need to have conversations around. And that's why we are here today. We're going to have a conversation around disruption. And many of us understand disruption in very many ways. I'm sure even just walking in here, you are thinking, oh my God, what a disruptive day, because so much is happening. But we're going to focus that disruption around refining legal practice, but especially inclining it to the health space. So the discussion topic today is sustaining legal practice in complex health emergencies, and we are very privileged to have experiences and lessons from across the countries that are going to be represented today. So allow me introduce my very beautiful panel and very intelligent panel too. I will start by inviting our specialist on health, law, and ethics. And this is none other than Miss Jessica Oga. I hope that's the pronunciation of your name. Yeah. Miss Oga, you're very, very welcome. She's the legal officer at Health Ethics and the Law Consulting and a doctoral candidate at Babcock University in Nigeria. So welcome, our Nigeria expert. I will then go ahead to invite Professor Segane Musisi, who is a professor of psychiatry at Makerere University. And he is also going to be talking to us about mental health and the legal implications there. Very welcome, Mr. Segane. And then we have Miss Molly Nkosi, who is a senior legal aid advocate, Malawi Legal Aid Bureau. So we have somebody from Malawi as well. And lastly, we have Miss Martha Isabella Achan, who's a legal advisor at Infectious Diseases Institute, Makerere. As you can see, this panel is very rich. This feels like a class that I'm standing here and asking them questions. So I'm going to come closer. Please allow me to come closer so it feels a little more like a conversation. Great. This is on. Great. So I'm going to request that we close the door because I get disrupted very easily, and I'm sure so many people will get disrupted. So let's close the door. Whoever else is coming in will just have to push the door. Welcome once again. I'm going to ask, yes, I have introduced my panel by name, and I ask you to talk a little bit about disruption in the space where you work. What does that look like? What does it mean? What is it? What is disruption in the space where you work? What has it been? What does it look like? How does it manifest, or how has it manifested? And we'll take it on from there. So maybe we start with Nigeria and then we come to Uganda. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and you can tell us anything else I forgot in your introduction that you think is important for this panel.
I think you covered it all. Thank you so much. Disruption, I think that's in my space in Nigeria, disruption really occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. So for us in Nigeria, as at the time that we had that pandemic, even though we had the public health emergency bill in 2013, this draft, it's still a bill because it hasn't yet been assented to by the president. So we had the Public Health Act of 1917. So for us, it was a bit, let me use the word disruptive, because it was like, what law is going to govern this space? What law is going to govern public health emergency? So of course, in my office, my boss was consulted to do some sort of legal analysis with for an assessment of our legal frameworks in compliance with the International Health Regulations 2005. So the International Health Regulation is a binding legal instrument that governs about 196 countries. So for us, disruption meant we needed to check all our laws and find out how it aligned with the international health regulations. I would say that we have come very far in Nigeria following the aftermath of COVID-19. I'm really proud of where we are at now. Thank you.
And I think that COVID-19 is a very, very good benchmark to use, because so many of us, not just in Nigeria, Africa, the world, we had never experienced anything to that magnitude. And therefore, checking ourselves and rechecking the pulse and making sure people are still alive, and even your policies are still alive, your frameworks are still alive, was a very, very, very key thing. My friends and I love to joke, and yet it's really a reality, that we are all one emergency away from poverty. And so since we are all one emergency away from poverty, we understand that our public health and our public laws must be able to respond to the very unprecedented disruptions that happen. I will come to Martha, because now I'm asking about public health. What does disruption look like in your space? What did it look like even in line with COVID-19? And what changes were you experiencing in that space? Yeah, there's a microphone here.
Thank you very much. For me, disruption actually is almost the same as my colleague from Nigeria. And I joined the health sector in 2019 from a commercial world. My main focus was to amend the Public Health Act. It had been enacted in 1935, so it was a very old law. And my main focus was to align it to the international health regulations. Now, as the work had started 3 months into the assignment, COVID happened. So I had to re-strategize. I was not hired to work on COVID laws, but the president announced 35 health measures. And the president says they have to become law. Close the airport, close schools, close places of worship. That is disruption in my world. But for us, it worked, because I had to explain to the scientists that, you can't just wake up in the morning and say presidential speeches are law. And it caused a lot of tension. That was disruption for me. So I had to learn to sensitize non-lawyers on how to come up with laws. So along the way, we came up with 23 instruments on COVID-19. I actually published an article on it. It was a very interesting time for me. But also for us, disruption meant that the process of amending the Public Health Act was expedited. I skipped many stages in the process because of COVID-19. And you see, right when we were trying to get out of COVID-19, Ebola happened last year in September. And again, disruption. But this time around, the health sector was more sensitized. My minister didn't have to quarrel with me again. We were able to pass laws within a period of 2 weeks. We had passed a law on Ebola. So for me, disruption worked for us in the health sector. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you so much. And you said friction. You will give them the microphone to Molly, because I'm going to talk about access to justice now. When you said friction, I expect that if every time there's disruption, there are people who will oppose, there are people who will be jumping on board, and those frictions cause some injustices to happen. So just tell us a little bit about access to justice in the time of disruption and how marginalized communities were able to access justice in your experience from Malawi.
Okay. I will just start by giving a brief history brief background of how the Malawi Legal Aid Bureau came into place. Initially, it was just a department under the Ministry of Justice, and it was a department to provide pro bono legal services to the marginalized and the people that can't afford private legal representation. So in 2010, because of so many systematic issues, an act was enacted so that the Legal Aid Bureau was established. So on its own, just becoming a bureau that is somehow disintegrating from main public service to be independent was disruptive in itself. So there's always that argument between government, as in how independent are you? Should we still control the institution? And also the fact that we are there to represent the people, and people didn't really understand what we're there for. So there's always that question, can you sue government? So during the pandemic, it was an issue that we really needed to cater to, because people were now being arrested due to the COVID regulations that were being placed. And the only people that were considered essential services were the Legal Aid Bureau. So we were only there to now represent these people in court, and they were looking at us like the same government is the one that has put these restrictive regulations. They're the same ones arresting us. And now you're bringing this legal aid person to come and represent us. It was like, I would rather represent myself. So for us, it's an issue where we had to now deal with awareness of what we do, and also let people understand that even in those regulations, their human rights have to be adhered to, and that's what we're there to make sure is being done. So when it comes to disruption, when you're providing access to justice to the marginalized, there's a lot of disruption. You have to make sure people understand why you're there. They also understand that you're there for them, and they also understand that sometimes you're also there just to make sure that whatever happens throughout the process, justice is actually seen to be done for those marginalized people. So that's what disruption looks like.
Thank you, Molly. And sometimes you're also just figuring it out as you go along. You mentioned that the legal aid service providers were allowed in Uganda. I think at first the lawyers were not even essential workers, right? It was just the medical practitioners. So lawyers were not seen as essential workers. And so you're not allowed to move, you're not allowed to respond, you're not allowed to, but people are having injustices happen all over the country. Professor Segane, now I know that mental health is sometimes looked at as just that. We don't think there are legal aspects of mental health that need to be surfaced when we are dealing with medical emergencies. Talk about your experience with your work in psychiatry, but also in disruption in the mental health space.
Thank you, Chair. First, it's a very big topic.
It is.
You have talked about COVID-19. We also the disruptions, the inability to access care. But what was most disruptive for mental health workers was actually the trivialization of mental illness, such that they closed mental health institutions, left the patients without care, without provisions, because, quote, they were going now to be used as isolation units. There was even a talk of wanting to close Butabika Hospital, totally. That's the major psychiatric hospital in this country. But suddenly all the mental health units in the regional referral hospitals were closed, and patients were just left. And they began running around, not knowing what to do, and then they began beating them. because they could not follow the instructions. At night, some were even shot at. So these were very disruptive. But I also would like to broaden the disruption in another way. We have seen riots or strikes in this country, and I'm sure in many African countries, and they disrupt work. I'll give you an example. One day, I was giving a lecture, and they told me that the city is burning because people were rioting. So I decided to leave and began to look for a way to go home. And I got in my car. For those of you who know Kampala, it was trying to... Well, those were also there. Those also caught me. And then I tried to drive towards Makerere through Nakulabi so that I could eventually go home. And Makerere students were coming because we were rioting. And I said, my goodness. So I looked in my mirror and said, no, I can't now go that way. Let me try to go back. And when I saw behind where police was coming with tear gas, and I was caught in there in between. And I said, where do I go? Then I wondered about the common people. How do they go through all of these disruptions in their lives every day, unpredictable? And how are they going to access not only care, but even how to go home? Or if I was injured at that moment in time, how was I going to access care? So there are daily disruptions because of the environment in which we are, not just infectious pandemics, but also many others. I have not mentioned about terrorist attacks, and stuff like that, wars. All of these things are disrupting people's lives and affect people's mental health and our daily practices. So I thought we could broaden it since it's disruptions and they have legal implications and human rights abuses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to come back to Martha because you surfaced some issues of public health. Now that we know that life in itself is a constant disruption, we know that every day something could happen that's a very big emergency. How do we prepare legally for these kinds of things? How? Because there are people out there who think, okay, if it's a health emergency, it's a health emergency. Why do we need lawyers? Why do we need the law? Why must we be talking about the law when people are dying, right? How do we prepare for public health emergencies legally?
Well,
and why is it important anyway?
It's extremely important. You see, let me now go public health language. Legal preparedness, as they call it, the relevance of legal frameworks is referred to as legal preparedness. It's important before the effective pharmaceutical interventions come into place. You see, once we got vaccines into the country, some of these laws were repealed. But before that happens, you need the laws. You need to actually have laws in place. So you can't, for example, say you're going to cause quarantine of a society. Lockdowns without a law, okay? So you should have laws in place before you actually be able to have vaccines. So legal preparedness is important. You have to prepare, you have to have laws in place. That's why I was explaining earlier on that eventually we came up with 23 COVID-19 instruments. Even for Ebola to lock down Wende, you had to actually have laws in place. So to prepare for outbreaks, the need for legal frameworks. And of course, the world has just learned that recently. Before, most countries had very old laws because there was no need for public health laws until COVID happened. Then it became very relevant. Actually, right now as we speak, we are trying to review the international health regulations. We're trying to come up with a pandemic treaty. You can imagine a pandemic treaty. Because of COVID-19, now the world has woken up on the relevance of legal preparedness, the relevance of legal frameworks. I even explained to you that you can imagine we skipped very important stages, but because of COVID-19, we have to make sure you have a new law in place on public health to cater for issues to do with outbreaks. Now, the current law that we have, you have new laws on vaccines, you have new laws on the new diseases, Ebola, COVID-19, SARS, MERS-CoV, Marburg, all those. So to prepare for these emergencies, you need to have emergency laws in place. So of course, we still have some hurdles here and there, as you heard about the human rights issues, mental health. Our country is yet to embrace ways of implementing health laws without using force. There's still a long way to go. We are working on it, but we shall get there. Yeah.
No, just to ask a follow-up question, is it enough to just have the laws? Because there's having the laws. We have them, we know. So why do people not use these laws? I don't know what the problem is, but in your experience, what do you think the problem is? I think that yes, you came up with all these regulations, you came up with, and yet another emergency will surface and we will still be stuck in the same place where we were. So is it enough to just have the laws? What more can we do beyond just having the laws?
We need to talk to people. You know, I've learned in the health sector that you can't make laws without dealing with the stakeholders and the subject matter experts. I've learned that I've been working on laws for some time, but in the health sector, I've learned that you need to work on laws with academia, with the civil society organizations. You have to work with all sorts of stakeholders, subject matter experts. You need to talk to people. People need to understand why won't I go to church? Why are you locking me down? I can't go to work. You can imagine in Mubende during the Ebola outbreak, only buses going through, but not stopping. People need to understand, why is this important? Why is a community quarantine important? For someone to actually abide by the law. So you're right. Laws are put in place, but the lack of sensitization. And of course, for me, I must say, let me say this before I continue. I'm the only lawyer in IDI. There are over 2,000 scientists in there. Right now in my space, I'm the only lawyer in public health in my space.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be here because I'm talking. I want people to come in. Yeah. Lawyers need to come in. It's a very green area. I'm trained by Americans because for them, public health is really, they've gone far. But here in Uganda, we still have a long way to go. So we need people who can talk. Of course, we are lucky. The civil society organizations are so many, and they talk, and they are so assertive. So they talk, they're able to question the laws we're coming up with. They challenge us, which is good. But then the lawyers are few. I must say, practically speaking, I'm alone. It's a lone voice. Yeah, but we are lucky. We have a very powerful parliamentary committee on health. So many public health experts in there. But that's not enough. We need people out there to talk about these laws, people to understand. Why are you passing these laws? Why can't I work? Why can't I go to hospital? People need to understand why. So laws are not enough without sensitization. Yeah, thank you.
And access to justice is also tied to sensitization. So Molly, what strategies are there to just, help marginalized communities understand that they have care, they can access the care, and that it's available for them to have access to whenever they need it? What strategies are you using in Malawi, or what have you learned from other countries in terms of access to justice for spaces like emergent spaces?
Okay, I will explain with the Malawi Legal Aid Bureau's strategies what we have been doing so far since 2016 up to today. What we did is that we have the mandate to not only provide legal representation, but we're also supposed to give legal advice and also provide civic legal education. So what we do is we always go to the districts in the rural areas to provide civic legal education, to tell people what their rights are and also let them know how to reach us. So beyond that, we have gone on different campaigns where we have now expanded our access. The high courts are only based in the cities, which are Blantyre, Lilongwe, Lilongwe, Zomba, and Mzuzu. And we have 28 districts, which means the only way people can access the high court is if they go to the cities, which is very expensive. So what we did is we opened district offices, and we also collaborate with the judiciary, with the prisons, with the police, and we hold camp courts where we take the court, the lawyers from the state, we take the lawyers from legal aid, and we go and find the people and provide justice to them, whether it's granting bail to them, if it's having appeals on land matters that are very common amongst the poor people. We take the court to the district courts, and the high court sits there and decides on their cases. Beyond that, we have also had strategies by placing toll-free lines in police stations, and we want to expand that in prisons so that people are able to even call us. Of course, the challenge when it comes to those types of strategies is that you have the police being resistant in actually letting the person know that you actually can have a lawyer and you can call them on this toll-free line. So what we have noticed that we need to do beyond just placing those systems and placing those structures is that to also give advice and also raise awareness on why we are not there to actually be the enemy to those institutions, but we're there to help them to do their work. So there's been a huge effort to actually increase awareness and knowledge in the fact that collaborative efforts actually help everybody, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the police, and even the accused person or the victim in that case, so that everything is done and justice is actually truly served. So those are some of the strategies that we've actually used, and it's actually been something that has been recognized as a tool where you now have the prisoners even telling you, when you go to the prisons, they tell you, when are you having another camp court? When are you going to have this thing? So it's something that has brought cohesiveness in the systems that we have, and it's also brought some awareness in how important every aspect of the justice system is. And that has really helped to bring and further access to justice to the marginalized.
Thank you very much, and I'll go to Dr. Sekane, and I'm very, very aware that mental health is really uncharted waters, because even the people that are working in the mental health space, some of them don't understand fully what mental health is and what is entailed in that. And you mentioned something around trivialization. I just want you to help us understand how we can move from that. Because with news reports saying we have 14 million people almost, susceptible to mental health challenges, and yet we continue to trivialize every day in how we report, in how we respond, in how we react, in how we deal with mental health. What do you suggest we do? How can we move on from this trivialization?
I think that question is a little bit difficult, because it means mental health or mental health literacy to the public, to health workers, to policymakers, to politicians, to legislators. But in disrupted situations, what I would like to ask lawyers, everyone here who is a lawyer, is to put your situation in disaster preparedness, so that you can legislate and influence policy, so that there will be guidelines in case of a disaster. Disasters are here, they are increasing every day. It's not just infectious pandemics, but let me give you an example. There are now wildfires everywhere, the whole world over. Just turn on your TV and look at the news. Volcanoes erupt, earthquakes come, floods, landslides. All of these things are disasters which bring complex health emergencies. And there's no law in Uganda right now to regulate response in complex health emergencies. That's where I need our lawyers to begin to work in. Of course, COVID-19 woke us up to one thing, which was an infectious pandemic. So did Ebola. But we have so many other disasters. Like we said, landslides, floods, terrorist attacks, wars, and all of these things. And people's rights are abused, access to care is denied, and people are traumatized. Women are raped, pregnancies come, and yet there are laws, restricting, for example, abortion rights in somebody who has been raped by somebody who is an enemy, and they're young, they're underage, they're 12, they're 14. We have had to deal with these things over the years. I think there is somewhere where I would like to ask lawyers to begin to look into how to make policy and legislate in disrupted environments. I think that will help go a long way into addressing the mental health dilemma and access to care of all patients, not patient citizens.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that call, but maybe just a bit before you hand over the microphone. I think that maybe the conversation is not the lack of understanding, is not the lack of the laws. We know that these things are there, right? Maybe the conversation is around the disconnect, right? Maybe we don't understand the connection to a fire and mental health. What has that got to do with mental health? What has that got to do with mental health? Some people don't understand that connection. And so whereas litigation is the way to go and I'm willing to respond, maybe I can't make the connection between an unwanted pregnancy and mental health. So again, it takes us back to sensitization, right? Even while we are calling for preparedness, you as a doctor that has been in psychiatry this long and has worked with people, do you think that as a country we have a proper understanding of the connection between mental health and all other forms of health, or mental health and the law, mental health and access to justice? Do we comprehend?
Thank you very much for that question. And I think let's stick to the area of complex health emergencies. These are complex situations which demand multidisciplinarity. There's no single discipline alone which can address it. Lawyers are there, doctors are there, counselors are there, politicians are there, legislators are there, common people are there, clergy is there. Yeah. All of them must be involved if we are going to address this issue. Culturists, for example, let me give you a very simple thing. In COVID-19, there were multiple deaths. How do you feel culturally not to be allowed to bury your mother? Yeah. How do you feel culturally not to be allowed to visit your dying child in hospital? How do you feel not getting infected and not being allowed to go to access care because, quote, you're not sick enough? So all of these things conjure up emotions. They do mental health disruption. Yeah. They disrupt that. But to talk about it in a single discipline is not good enough. It has to be tackled in a multidisciplinary manner. And that's what disaster preparedness is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will go to Jessica and then I will open up to plenary. So if you have questions, now is the time for you to get ready to put your hands up. Jessica, Dr. Segane has just used an example that I struggled with in the pandemic, just that closure and understanding that culture. Yes, I understand what the legal and the health implication is for me to not bury my person, but why have you not explained it? Why is it just a directive that I can't bury my person, I can't see my person, when culturally I need the closure to move on? So my question to you is, what ethical considerations and legal frameworks have worked in Malawi in preparing for crises like this?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm from Nigeria.
Sorry, Nigeria. See, now I'm confusing. I'm giving you away to Malawi and taking Molly to Nigeria.
We're one. Okay, so my answer would most likely be similar to Martha's own. This is the thing about legal preparedness that we're talking about, community engagement. So the IHR has different perspectives or different categories. We have prevent, we have detect, we have control, we have respond, report, and then we have respond. So I think that one of the things that is very, very pivotal is during legal preparedness, we need community engagement. Also, because COVID-19 was very novel, it wasn't something that we had experienced. It took the world by surprise. Like, literally, people didn't. I would give my own personal experience. I had just returned from the US, and my youngest brother fell ill 2 days later. He was rolling on the floor. We didn't even know what he had, but I remember my mom screaming, "You have brought COVID, you have brought COVID, you have brought COVID." We took him to different hospitals and nobody was willing to touch him. And in my mind, I had said, if anything happens to this boy, my mother will kill me. And I was just praying that, God, let nothing happen to him. Finally, a hospital decided to take him. And when this hospital took him, apparently he had malaria. He had malaria, but also he was also scared maybe the whole COVID had also gotten to him, and he decided to also be dramatic and roll on the floor. So, so you can imagine. So I think that one thing that is really, really important for legal preparedness would be community engagement. We also need to be transparent when we're trying to explain to people why in a situation where we have a public health emergency, when you can't bury your mother, you can't bury your father, because when you do this, there's a potential to infect other people. When people know that, when people understand, I think it's easier for them to have closure. But because of how COVID came, everyone was surprised. I think from even till now, I think people who lost their parents or siblings or friends to COVID-19, I doubt that they would still have gotten closure till now. So I'm not saying that we should pray again for a public health event of international concern, but I'm saying that we can start preparing now. We can start teaching people. We can do capacity enhancement. In a country like ours, where we have federal and states, people confused on who is going to take power, who is responsible for ports, who is responsible for closure of this or that. If we can begin now to capacitate people, then in an event like this, it will be easier for people to have closure. If we can be transparent, if government can also be accountable to people, I think that would really help future emergencies. Thank you so much.
Speaking of accountability, let's ask some accountability questions. Yes, you already have a microphone, so I'll let you take the first question. You can direct it to the entire panel or to a particular person.
I think it is to the entire panel, but particularly to the legal lead on the panel. Public health and the way public policy tends to deal with public health comes off as, one of the cardinal principles of the rule of law is not over concentrating power in a particular individual. We have a history from the time of HIV. I think that was the first time we saw the executive function taking central stage in responding to a public health crisis. The president came out for very good reasons, by the way, and everybody we were lucky he did when he did. We saw the same trend, but continuing in magnitude around Ebola. But I think the power of the presidency in dealing with public health came to the fore during COVID. A mere address on TV, the entire city was evacuated within less than 12 hours. It was quiet as the grave. Now, at that time, that was a very good reason, a very noble reason. And as our sister from Nigeria said, everybody could understand it. And we are lucky. We even have a rational president who will exercise that power for our good. And it's not my worry. My worry is the rogue one, for whom we have legislated and bestowed a lot of power to suspend human freedoms unchecked in the name of public health. God forbid that he needs to use that power for other reasons other than public health. There will be other auxiliary problems that will create, as Dr. Segana has explained. Rights, small rights of association will be infringed. Political assemblies won't be allowed. Bars will close. Businesses will suffer. And if indeed there is no independent authority to give a semblance of due process before these proclamations are made to curtail freedoms in the name of public health, then we have given birth to a monster that we are feeding by legislation and goodwill, who will grow on that and then feast on us. I would be comfortable if maybe there was an authority, because you see, when weddings were being suspended, we are being told We are following the science. The science says if you're 17 and in a big room, you're safe. But we don't know who fed the president this science. Can there be an open forum within the framework of the law where these decisions are taken? Because you see, unfortunately for the lawyers in the room, it's not one thing to do the right, it's one thing to do the right thing, but that is not enough. You must also be seen to be doing the right thing. If you only did the right thing, you become very subjective. So my problem is around protection of rule of law amidst disruptions, such that even when we are in a crisis, even if it's a fire, a hurricane, a landslide, there is some semblance of due process. There is a very old imaginary case that is usually taught in law school, in jurisprudence, called the case of the Peruvian explorers. They were starving. They had strayed from land. They were in the sea, and they decided to cast a lot, and whoever lost would be eaten. Now they ate one of their friends. One of the judges was very creative. He said, "No, these people." At that point, they enacted unto themselves a constitution to govern themselves in that crisis, and they didn't commit murder. There was due process. So even in crisis, there should be some semblance of due process while we are suspending rights, while we are stampeding everybody to do what we think is in their best interest. And I think for me, if we can address that, then we are able to take care of other fallouts from such actions, because then these ones get to live longer. There are people who never got closure because they didn't bury relatives, still get nightmares of bumping into them on Kampala Road. They end up in Dr. Mc's clinic. And at that time, it's hard to imagine and manage. It affects so many other people, children, friends. So it's not enough to have laws that pour a lot of authority in only one individual. It's important to also determine how careful that authority is used. Today it's used very well, but I wish it would be used well tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I think that you raised a couple of issues that they already agree with in terms of direction of thoughts. We didn't get your name, so.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
Isaac. Yes. Can we let her say something?
He raises very good issues, really important. I must say that it is true. The president had a lot of advisors, a lot of scientists around him, mostly epidemiologists. And, because of our experience as Uganda in response to Ebola in West Africa, many Ugandans worked there. We had quite many experts on the team. So it is true, he may have been speaking alone, those speeches and all that, but he had a lot of advisors and was listening to them. Then also, you must know as a lawyer that these instruments that he was passing are supposed to be announced by the minister. But because this situation was very new, we needed somebody who could actually be listened to, like the president. But ordinarily, like you saw for Ebola, they're supposed to be announced by the Minister of Health. So there's actually a distribution of leadership. However, you must know, like I said earlier on, for the last 85 years, we've been operating under a very old law of public health. Myself, I had to push to have even laws that you heard of on COVID-19. The scientists don't believe that. The scientists thought that the presidential speeches were law. So I must say, yes, we have a long way to go, but even to have laws in place was a hurdle. Now the scientists have woken up and realized legal preparedness is important. Now we have to start from there. It is hard, even for myself, because I really like the topic of rule of law and I'm passionate about it. And that's why I pushed for these laws to be in place. There's a problem with the implementation and understanding of these laws. The issue of the cultural beliefs was a big problem. Even for Ebola, mind you, even for Ebola, we made the same mistakes, I must say. We passed Ebola laws. We didn't explain to people why they can't bury their loved ones. And we had a very big outbreak when a family removed the body of their loved one, a Muslim family, and they all got sick because no one explained to them the danger. They all thought it was witchcraft and all that. So yes, they're actually problems that we have to face, other than the challenges of working this kind of space. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I will just wrap that up with your challenge to the other invitation to everybody in this room. Join the space, because she can't do the work alone. You know, the lawyers are there, you have the work, just do the work. More questions? Any other person with a question, comment? Just you want to respond?
Yeah.
So
So, sorry, just a quick example. When he was explaining how things were here, in Malawi, the COVID pandemic happened at a very, very critical time. It was a time when we were having general elections. So this was a time when the pandemic happened during a time when we had a contested general election, and then we also were transitioning from one government to a new government. So there were so many things that were coming into play. Initially, when the previous government came, the president closed all borders and they went in and did all these things. Then there was also pressure from the campaign side, because now the crowds were restricted, but they needed to campaign, they needed to publicize. Even by the time we voted, there were issues surrounding that. So all directives were also being influenced by bias and also by the pressure from everything that was around there during the political environment there. But what really helped and shaped things and to hold the government accountable when they were making decisions was the lawyers. The legal fraternity really helped by taking the government to court and also holding them accountable. And the judiciary was also very independent in making sure that human rights were being adhered to in whatever laws and regulations that were being taken place. So that's where us as lawyers, we are supposed to now take the forefront in such situations to really find ways to hold the government accountable, rather than to sit down and say there's no legal framework to hold the government accountable, so we are there to actually take up that front and actually do those things. So that's what I wanted to just add on to.
Mr. Mbanga, thank you very much for your contribution. I just want the whole audience here to address one question. If you have leadership which does not believe in technical knowledge, you have a problem. We saw what happened in the States, we saw what happened in Tanzania, we saw what happened in Burundi, and many other countries, whereby people can have power, but refuse to be advised by expert opinion. And I don't know, I would like lawyers here to tell us how to address that in the absence of prior legislation to guide the country in emergency situations of nature where there's mass death.
Okay, okay, please. You already have the microphone. Maybe we should take all the questions and then the panel will respond so that it's easier to manage the time.
I'm Anton, I'm a journalist. My question goes to counsel. Unfortunately, I didn't get your name. Martha. Yeah. You talked about the pandemic treaty. I just wanted you to throw more light about what it is, and then also how far has this piece of legislation gone, and then where does Uganda lie in this process? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other question, comment? There's a hand behind you.
Thank you very much. My question goes to Martha. I just wanted you to shed more light on the 23 laws. Now that the situation is kind of normalizing, I would assume the disruption has scaled down. Did we go back to repeal some of those laws that are now no longer relevant?
Thank you very much. Any other question, comment? There's a hand this side. Are we able to access the questions online? Is there anybody online with a question, comment, anything? You could just ask them while we.
Thank you so much. My name is Mary Naroga. I'm in the Pro Bono office. And I'm just requesting Martha, like yesterday we were in the aviation discussion, and it's also a new area whereby lawyers didn't know how to get into aviation, what is there. And it's the same thing that I've also found while I was trying to engage lawyers to enter here and know about health. And some of them were like, what is health? What am I going even to learn from health? But then there's a lot of things that we can draw from here and probably enter into the industry. So I was requesting Martha maybe to draw more, light on that, like how do we get into that? How did she get there? It helps also to draw for us who are able to enter and know, to guide us through the process and where we can get probably free education, like what she said.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's key, that's important. Any other person with a question, comment? Okay.
Hello, my name is Lenny. My comment is on how Africa can, find contextual solutions for the circumstances that apply to Africa. As you know, most of the panelists have been speaking to, integrating or making sure that our laws are in consonance with international instruments. However, do those instruments just apply across the board, or are there unique situations that African communities face and can be addressed by our own legislation? Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, I will close the plenary now and ask the panel to respond, and then we will see how to wrap this up.
Okay, I think for the part of the pandemic treaty, we can respond with Jessica. Yeah, because I know Nigeria is participating in this as well. Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. As a journalist, I request you to access the WHO website, because I want to just talk about it briefly, but it's a question of interest, even for all of us lawyers here. Following the COVID-19 outbreak, there was a proposal to amend the international health regulations. However, those are limited because they are focusing mostly on detecting disease outbreaks and responding. However, issues to do with access to vaccines, genomic simple words, the science. I've learned their terms. What happens is, like, when there's an outbreak of a disease, people come and collect the organisms, the pathogens, and carry out tests and come up with vaccines. Benefit sharing. Okay, when they do that, how do countries benefit from the science, the innovation of the vaccines? So those questions are too wide for international health regulations. So WHO and many other organizations sat down and said, we need to come up with a pandemic treaty, an international agreement to be able to handle those issues that are too wide for international health regulations. Now, so far we have had 6 meetings in Geneva. They are calling them INB, Intergovernmental Negotiating Body, something like that. And different countries are participating in the meetings. I participate online. I can't participate in person. I have a very tight program, but we have representation from Uganda, and we have technical support from Resolve to Save Lives. That's why I asked my colleague to also respond, because she's part of the same team. And we have a particular delegate, Dr. Chabainze. But why I'm saying access the website, because you find the recordings of what is happening. We'll be meeting again next week to draft the agreement, and they have a deadline of May 2024 to present the agreement back to the World Health Assembly. So, colleagues, this is extremely important for us in this space. I may talk about these issues now, because even the IHR is undergoing review, the international health regulations are going review. So it's good for you to access these meetings. For the international health regulations, it's called the Working Group IHR, WGIHR. You go to the website of WHO, you just type in WGIHR, you find the information. Then for the pandemic treaty, you type in INB meetings. intergovernmental bodies, negotiating bodies. You find that information. I think my colleague will add on to that. So how far we have gone, we're in the 6th meeting. Uganda is participating very much, but we're participating as a bloc, Africa group. It's much easier that way. Some countries are attending there, but they are supporting us. We are participating as a group, and Uganda has been very active in these discussions. Of course, it is very important I thought a lawyer would ask, why aren't we being consulted about this? Yes, because really there's no input from the legal fraternity. And this is a room full of lawyers, actually. Very few scientists, mostly lawyers are in there, or they are backing up the scientists. And I know there are many experts, international law, in the legal fraternity who would have loved to give yes in that space. Yeah, then there are 23 laws on COVID-19. They have all been repealed. Like I said, laws are really important as NIPIs. They call them non-pharmaceutical interventions. After you come up with the vaccines, most of these laws were repealed. However, 2 laws still exist. Wearing of masks in public, so all of you are contravening that law. And also examination at the points of entry. That's why they ask you for the COVID certificate, because that is a law, still a requirement. Those are still the statute books, but we've repealed the rest of them. Okay? And then how to get in. This will take some time, we shall meet. But I have to say, I was in URSB before, then in privatization unit before. I was in the commercial world before. So I got into the public health space to work on laws. I have a passion for reforming laws. So when I got there, COVID-19 happened. And then I got drawn into the world of public health. And as I speak, I've just completed my master's in public health. And my thesis was on use of laws to respond to disease outbreaks all over Africa. It was a scoping review. So somehow I've become an expert. Part of the negotiations, I've written articles, I'm publishing some of these articles. But I think how to get in, you have to have a passion, have a passion in this kind of space, because it's not an easy area to work. You won't be expecting the big bucks like in the commercial world, I must be honest with you, but it's a matter of passion and loving your country, because these scientists are very brilliant. We must be having the best public health experts in the world, I believe. But there's that gap of the policy. The law is a big gap. I said I'm alone because I realized when I got into the space that actually I'm the one who wants to talk about these issues and comfort these scientists, telling people you can't keep quiet with all these innovations. We need to go policy-wise. So it needs to be, you have to have passionate about it to come in the space. And of course, we welcome the young lawyers. I'm training some. It is easier when you've done the public health masters, it's much easier. But still, the good thing about scientists is that they are teachers. I don't know how they do that, but most scientists teach. So I learned so much in a very short time from them, because they are open about sharing information. They publish a lot. You learn about epidemiology just by reading many, many articles, peer-reviewed articles. You pick up a lot. So to get in, there are very many areas for practice. I'm in IDI, but we have a rival organization called Baylor. They also need a lawyer. Africa CDC is advertising. Africa CDC is the best space for exposure. Then also we have IOM, the guys who do the migration. When you see these science organizations advertising for policy people, don't be intimidated. The good thing about science is, I repeat it, they teach, they want to train. So you pick up. If you have a passion for it, you pick up. But we shall talk further afterwards. Yeah. How do countries domesticate? I think this one's for the whole panel. Yeah. I have been doing work with Africa CDC on biosafety and biosecurity. Lenny, you asked about this. And the question is about how do we domesticate these international agreements. First of all, there's the legal frameworks in the country on how to domesticate laws. So it's not a cut and paste thing. For us in Uganda, for example, international health regulations, we have not just cut and paste, we are going to domesticate according to our situation. Some of these things are too advanced for our third world economy. And that is really the thing for lawyers. When a law is brought before you, they bring before you the international health regulations or the bioweapons convention, and they tell you we want this to become a law. A scientist will tell you that. We want the bioweapons convention to become a law in Uganda. I say, no. We have to domesticate, we have to make it adaptable to our situation here in Uganda. So at the back of your mind, as we're advising in the science world, know what applies in Uganda and what doesn't apply. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll just add a bit to what my colleague has said. As regards the pandemic treaty, she's really right. There are so many available recordings on WHO's website. I've also been attending online, just like Mata. I would also add that during the pandemic, there was an issue of uneven distribution of vaccines, which was a very big issue for Africans. So the pandemic treaty is also an opportunity for us to have conversations on how vaccines can be more distributed equally, for there to be equity in distribution of vaccines. Also, it's an opportunity for us as Africans to look at the current framework and see what we can add or what does not apply to our situation as Africans. Then, as regards the health space, I would say that many people don't know, but it's an untapped mine. Like, I'm excited for people who are here, because even before I became a public health lawyer, I was also not in the health space, but I would no longer be just anywhere. I would have it any other place than to be in health. Currently, I think September 5th, IOM is doing an online training on migration and health. I can share with you so you can join the teaching. I also think that it's also something for Martha to consider capacity and training enhancement for young lawyers. I heard that you're doing something on training. I think we can have that conversation and see how we can get support from our people from Resolve to Save Lives. So I think that's I think that's something that they will be very interested in, and they would definitely want, because we can't just have Martha, come on. Health. We just can't. Like, public, it's very interesting. We need to train the next generation on exactly, on not just IHR, but we need to, by ourselves, also be independent as Africans. I think that would be all I'll be adding from my end. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. My appeal is in line with what I think my colleague there was trying to ask. How do we make things Afrocentric? It was very disturbing that countries in Africa failed to get together to collaborate to make a vaccine. And we talk about equitable distribution of vaccines, so we have to beg them. If Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania combined and they say, we are going to make a vaccine, they can do it. But instead, we went on our knees to beg to have vaccines. And when some African researchers began looking into possible remedies for COVID, in this country, parliamentarians went to debate to block it. Scientists are not protected to freely research and give information. Let me give you one example for Ugandans here. You remember the disease called nodding disease? Somebody came in, flew in from CDC, went up north, forgot all about anything that we were doing here, and then came up to try to say, this is epilepsy. Up to now, nobody has ever answered the cause for nodding syndrome. But I told them that disperse the IDP camps, stop the war, nodding syndrome will stop. That's what you are nodding syndrome. Once the camps began to be dispersed and the kids were able to go back to their families and all of that stopped, the rates began, up to now, not a single case is being reported. But instead, they were looking for onchocerciasis, viruses, food toxins. They refused to listen to the African scientists. And I remember attending that nodding syndrome conference, international in the Sheraton. And we argued a lot, but they were not listening. Until we sit down to address our contexts and get together and collaborate, we shall always be beggars and we shall always be given handouts as second hand. That's what we saw in the COVID-19. It will come again. And also, I'm sorry, again, I have to remember this. We have to listen to our scientists. To me, it hurts me very much to see political leadership that refuses to listen to technical experts from their own. When I saw presidents in Africa dying by denying, even their vice presidents dying, and I said, what is this? How do we address it? So as lawyers, as people, in fact, I'm so glad that you're there. By the way, Bela is not your contestant. They are colleagues. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. We should all work together collaboratively to address things that pertain to us. And we shall address questions like he's addressing there. Nobody will answer these things for us. Thank you very much.
My petition will be that as a human rights advocate, my understanding when I've delved into health issues is that it's a human rights issue. There's no way that we can deal with anything. We can enhance health for people without dealing with their human rights. And that is where we are in as lawyers. You cannot be a lawyer and not talk about human rights. You have to always understand that it's a human rights issue. The Constitution provides for it. We start there and we build on it. So every time they bring in laws, they have policies, we always have to look at it and say, how will it affect people's rights? So for me, I will always say health is a human rights issue. There's so much space you can go in through the human rights aspect avenue. Now we are progressing to that way where we even argue in court using the human rights approach. So now we have to always understand that health is very important because it's a human rights issue. The world has understood that. Africa, we have to also understand that. Thank you.
One last follow-up question, and then we will, yes. There's a microphone next to you for the people online.
She said majority of the laws have since been repealed in regard to the public health. That's refers to COVID-19. And you said what is remaining is wearing of face masks in public and
examinations, medical examination at the points of entry, at the airports and the border crossings.
So now that COVID-19 has gone down, is it still necessary to have those laws still on the?
But I don't know whether it has gone down, but they are trying to say it's endemic. There are traces of it, yeah, because sometimes you may be in a room where people are actually sneezing and coughing and all, you have to wear that mask. It's just important, at least where I work, yes. And also to be some time before we remove the one of the points of entry, the medical examination of the points of entry. We still need time, yeah. Yes.
President Obama had made the playbook of how to address the pandemic. Trump threw it away, and COVID came, and you saw what happened in the States. Another pandemic is coming. This is not the end. Believe me. You just watch your time, and this is not the first pandemic. They have been happening year in, years out. So another one will come. That's why I said we have to have disaster preparedness, multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral. We listen to each other, we advise, we listen to everybody, we put in laws so that when the thing comes, we know what to do. Otherwise, right now, as we speak right now in Uganda, we're not ready.
Thank you very much. And if I add any other English words to what Dr. Segane has said, I will be diluting everything that has been said in this room. So I want to thank you very much for being a very good audience. And I want to thank the panel for accepting to share their wisdom with us. As we close, I want to invite Mona Lisa to come and wrap this up nicely, very, very nicely, as we close this panel for the day. Mona Lisa, as she comes, is a vaccinologist. I was even going to bite my tongue. But yes, she's a vaccinologist and clinical pharmacist, Medicine Safety for Quality Monitoring Committee Pharmacy for Medicines Regulatory Authority in Malawi. Over to you, my dear. You people who are not clapping for this big woman, can you be these things? They are not easy.
Thank you very much, Penny. Wow, this has been amazing. I believe that we've all learned from these wonderful and very educated people. I just want to give you like the key messages that we should take as we're getting out of this room. And for me, the most important thing that has been highlighted is the need for multidisciplinarity. And even as we're looking at sustaining legal practice in complex health emergencies, I believe that as lawyers, it is a time for us to reinvent ourselves in a time of disruption. And what has been shared here is a very good place to start for us to actually reinvent ourselves. And so we can start by involving the public, involving other sectors, just as the professor said that the scientists need protection, and above and beyond that, even as Martha has said, they also need you guys to educate them on laws and policies, even as they educate you on science and issues pertaining to public health. So, and then when you come together, you can also educate the public on how all these things can work together so that we can be better protected during public health emergencies. And the second thing that I think we all need to take note of and remember is that most of our laws in Africa, I'm sure even if Molly had mentioned how old the current public health law in Malawi is, you'd realize that it is old and it needs revamping. And so this is also another opportunity for you guys as lawyers to come in and reinvent yourselves and provide yourselves as service providers to make sure that we have legal preparedness. It's not just about what are the doctors going to do, what are the vaccinologists going to do. Because for me as a vaccinologist who works with a regulator, with a medicines regulator, there is not much that we can do outside of our laws in Malawi. So I can have all the knowledge, all the science, but if the laws do not permit me to do anything, it ends there and we're stuck. And if, for example, if a medicine is not registered in our country, it might be life-saving, but I cannot give it to anyone. So this is where we need to come in and make sure that we have the right frameworks that we're preparing ourselves to have the right frameworks that can better address our situations in disasters. And lastly, I want to throw a question that our panelists kept bringing up to us. I think one important thing that we need to keep asking ourselves as we go on to do our work, as we go on to make influence in our spaces is, how do we balance human rights and legal responses to public health emergencies? And I think whether you work in law, in public health, wherever you are, I think it's an important question to keep asking ourselves, that as we make these laws, as we advise these people to make rules, how do we balance human rights and our public health or legal response to public health emergencies? Thank you very much. And at this point, I would like to invite Aksam to give us our closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Mona Lisa. With the interest of time, I know we have only 3 minutes to be off. Protocol observed. Thank you so much for everyone in this room. I want to thank ULS for this opportunity to make sure that health issues are also part of the legal fraternity and that we should give them our utmost attention. I also wish to thank Afya na Haki for being a co-convener of this great conference that is so happening. And we can't thank enough all of you that are here. But to our panelists and our dear moderator, you've done us great service. We can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause. And my task is so simple. I take the honor to declare this breakout panel session closed, and I want to invite you for a group picture at the photo booth. Thank you so much. For God and my country. Oh, okay, it's okay.